I am resident of Collinwood for YouTube. Joel Sands, that is Tom Hotz, and that is Vickie Ray. They did the Literary License podcast for many, 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 many years, and they are here to talk Dark Shadows with me. So, ladies first, Vickie, when did you get into Dark Shadows?
When I was 5 years old, but I wasn't supposed to be watching it. My brothers would turn it on, and they were older than me, and we would run home from school, Catholic school even, Sacred Heart in Northern New York, and we'd run home to watch Dark Shadows. I was always pushed out, though. My mother didn't want me to watch it because it scared me. But, you know, when you go back and look at it, well, you don't realize why was I scared, back. But, I mean, it was scary shit when you were a little kid, though. It really was. Yeah. But I loved it.
Tom, when did you first watch DS?
Probably when I was, let's see, it would have been 1967 or 68. A friend of mine, we were in my apartment, my parents' apartment, and I was 12 years old, I was around 12 years old, and it was 67, and we turned it on, and I think it was they were in 1795, and I said, oh, that looks interesting. Now let's go on to the next thing. Then the next thing you know, I had a cousin lived across the street from me, and he watched it on a color set because we had black and white. We were.
Talk about aging ourselves. I remember the black and white.
Yeah. My birthday actually is the 24th of this month. I'm not going to say how old I'm going to be. By the way, I go by the name, and now, of course, the secret is out. My real name is Tom Hotz, but I went under the name of Tom Diamond when I did the podcast. So, and that was because I was afraid I was going to get a visit from Count Patafi and Quentin if I didn't watch out. But Angelique, I would have appreciated. Anyway, at my cousin's house, there was Angelique the Vampire already, and I was enthralled. I was fascinated. I love female vampires, and I used to always tease Vickie about going to a dentist and getting some fangs and stuff like that. But I just said, oh my God, how is this? How is it possible that this is on TV? And I started watching from there on in, and that was probably early '68. And I had to go to high school. When I had to go to high school, I got home. Well, it came on at 4:00, and I got home at 20 after 4, and I was so pissed off. But and one time I had to go to the country with my parents during the summer, the Catskills, and they didn't have good TV reception. And I was
not like you could stream back then, It's like, what's streaming?
That was foreign language. Stream was a river. What are you talking about, Vickie? A stream was a river, and they don't, they just don't. This is a different world now, but it's an interesting world, and I'm very pleased, and I'm sure Vickie agrees with me. I'm very pleased that Dark Shadows has maintained not only the fandom that it had back then, but there are second and third generations.
Wow, there's so many new people that watch it now, like my grandkids. Yeah.
Your grandchildren watch it. Wow. Would you think
Asher goes, where's the special effects? I go, that is the special effects right there.
Would you call her a grandma? She's so beautiful. My God, you think she's a grandma with that hair. But anyway, the bottom line is that Dark Shadows for me has always been a labor of love. And I was bereft when it was taken off and replaced with Password reruns. And I was depressed for a month or two, I think. And then all of a sudden, I'm walking by a theater in Brooklyn, where I come from. I come from Brooklyn, New York, and you can tell my Brooklyn accent, hopefully, or maybe not so hopefully, because I've been in Florida for a while and I'm losing it. But anyway, so I'm walking by a theater and I see this poster for Night of Dark Shadows, the second movie, and I didn't even know Night of Dark Shadows was. I didn't even know about it, that it had come out. I knew that it was
The
being
first
made.
movie,
Night of Dark Shadows, the second one with
the second one.
yeah, with Lara Parker playing Angelique, the ghost witch, and Charles and Selby plays Charles Collins, and uh,
Right.
and you got Kate Jackson, who got her start on the show. Um, I dropped everything and ran into that theater and stayed through two showings. And it was a good thing I did because I think next week the theater burned down. Uh, I didn't set fire to it, but I was like, they got a McDonald's they got a McDonald's on that site now. They've had it for years. But I went to the Mayfair Theater in Brooklyn, if anybody remembers that out there, and that's where I got my start. But I'm not going to monopolize this. I want to hear my friend Vickie talk here.
Well, my next my next question is, do you remember the first episode you watched, Vicky? Or
I think
The
the first episodes, well, back then, everybody kind of skipped. We skipped the first 200, and it seemed like the only thing people were interested in was episode 208 and then on. But some of my favorite episodes came before that, like the Phoenix storyline.
yeah,
I mean, all of that was some pretty badass stuff. I really enjoyed that. I don't think that my experience with Dark Shadows would have been the same had I not watched all of those beginning episodes before, Barnabas shows up at 208, whatever. So I watched right straight from the beginning on. And then when we started our podcast, we started the very beginning show and worked our way all the way through.
what when
I
you went back?
watched.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Tom. I'm sorry.
I was going to say the first episode I watched that I remember watching was in 1795, and it was one of the dreams that Nathan Forbes had, Joe Provis, who played him. And there he is looking like Lieutenant Forbes in that nice looking Revolutionary Boy suit. And I think it may have been.
A change of clothes, though. He definitely needed a change of clothes in the 1795.
Well, he was lucky because
Nathan needed a change of clothes.
he was lucky because as Joe Haskell, he was, he was Mr. Nice Guy, Mr. Straight Eddie, and with love with Maggie and stuff like that. Nathan Forbes, he got to play a real villain, and so it was a nice change, and it showed his acting ability certainly. Now, who is that? Is that Sophie? Your pet? Is that who? Is that who? Vickie? So
It's Sophie.
that's cute. I don't think so. My mother's name. So anyway, uh, so that was the first episode that I watched.
Yeah. Who was the character, Vicky first? Who was the character you first sort of fell in love with as your favorite character?
First fell in love with. We always had that problem sorting that out when we were watching that because I had favorite characters every show. Every show I had a different favorite character. But I mean, all the way around, most people like Barnabas or whatever. But anything that I'd have to say Julia always stood out. My favorite Julia moment was when she was lighting her cigarette off of the candelabra in the beginning when it was still black and white. You know which one I'm talking about?
She's in the old house, and
that one just stood out. And I mean, she was just. I mean, was it Night of the Iguana? Did she ever get her Oscar for that, or she was nominated for that?
She was nominated for Night of the Iguana.
But she was just such an exceptional actress. I mean, she could play anything. I just loved her.
Yeah. Tom, who was the character you first fell in love with?
Wow. Well, I was in lust over Lara Parker's character, but I
You
think
and everybody else, my brothers, the neighbors' boys, everybody.
I mean, my God, I mean, she was really beautiful. May she rest in peace. She passed recently. Um, but I think that I didn't fall in love with this character, but I really admired Thayer David's acting.
Oh
Professor
God.
Stokes, Count Patafi, Ben Stokes. Used to imitate Ben Stokes all the time, Mr. Barnabas. You know, what are you doing with Mr. Joshua, Mr. Barnabas? Ben, I want you, Ben. No, we made
So yeah.
we were nasty. We were nasty about that. But Thayer David was a really talented actor, and I was very pleased to have his nephew. We interviewed his nephew, if you remember, Vickie, and
That's
who's
right.
who's in Harvard. He's a professor of he's a health sciences professor at Harvard. And he's got his PhD, and really nice, interesting guy. And he has a lot of interesting tidbits to talk about his uncle. And he was close with him when he was young. And Thayer David, or David Thayer, because that was his really easiest to reverse the names. But Thayer David was an extremely versatile actor, and I think it would be a toss-up between him and Louis Edmonds.
I was just gonna say you gotta give Louis Edmonds something, because I mean he had the best one-liners in the beginning. I mean, what was it when Victoria got locked in the attic and he was out there making the ghost sounds? He's going, "Woo!" Remember when he was doing that stuff? I mean, he was just funny.
He
As
was.
soon as I saw him coming, I knew he was gonna start ragging on somebody. But
I mean, his
he had
lines.
the best liners.
Yeah, his lines were classic. Liz, are we going to make Collinwood a hotel and rent out the rooms?
Yeah.
Either
Yeah.
that or when David was trying to kill his father all the time.
Oh yeah, with the bleeding around, that kind of thing. They actually had. I don't know if you've had Penny Dreadful Danielle on your podcast
I've
yet.
had, yeah.
Yeah, she's. We had her when she was just starting out, and she just decided to do it. And we knew right away, that she was extremely talented, and she. Well, and she recently interviewed, and it was quite a coup. She interviewed David Hennessy.
Yeah.
Just interviewed David Hennessy. What's that?
He was hard to get.
He was terribly hard to get. He was almost impossible to get. But the story went that I think he was, he wanted to get friendlier with the fans, but they accosted him in one of the restaurants he worked in, and he was supposed to come to a convention. He got scared off and for a while because he's had a very interesting entrepreneurial life, and of course, David. But anyway, in answer to your question, Jewel, I think that that aside from my undying lust for Angelique, I think that Thayer David and Louis Edmonds were
Louis Edmonds,
definitely up there
definitely.
in terms of acting regimen.
Yeah, he goes into the West Wing through the secret passage in the drawing room, and he takes the broom to the door. He goes, "Victoria Winters,
Oh,
go
sure.
home, go home." What's wrong with you, dude?
Woo!
Yeah. Yeah, he
I
was.
mean, he was just funny. I don't know. I mean, they're bloopers. We had just a scene for bloopers, because there were so many bloopers. Because I mean, it was a live show. I mean, I don't think people comprehend live show in this day and age.
No, they don't, because I mean, they still keep bloopers in a separate reel.
Oh yeah.
But back then, whatever
Like when the
bloopers there were.
curtains fell that one time, that just killed me. The curtains fell. They just kept rolling.
Oh
Or
yeah,
the lights
with
in the back,
Roger
they just
Davis
keep
and
rolling.
as Charles Delaware Tate in the curtain fell, and of course, poor Jonathan Frid, they caught him picking his nose in one of those. It was, I mean, some of those
The
bloopers
guy
were
with the
really.
boob, they needed to fire that guy. The boob was something I've never seen.
Oh, you're talking about the bat guy? Bill Baird used to run around with but the
Oh, the bat.
bloopers.
You can't forget the bat.
But Curtis's attitude was, look, nobody's going to remember this show. Nobody's going to watch it again, and we got to
Yeah.
save money.
I think he
So,
did think that. I bet you he did on several occasions.
oh yeah, absolutely. So that's why the bloopers stuck in there. The most heartwarming counterpoint to the show. They were a great team of actors. I mean, if you were to say who's better here, who's better there, they were all good. But especially the core cast of Joan Bennett and Louis Edmonds
Bennett
and
was just
David Hennessy and
she was just Joan Bennett. She just was like Grace under fire all the time on that set. She just was. She just added the little bit of old fashioned class that it needed, and they got that edge with her.
hmm And she was, and of course Alexandra Mulkey, who's, who everyone wishes married Burke, and they killed him off in a plane crash.
And they no hope of bringing him back either. It's just like he just didn't come back. Bert was gone. That was it. But he was
No,
they were all old men hitting on like 20-year-old girls, though. It's like, what gives with this, philosophy?
With that
Everybody
Carolyn
wanted
too,
Victoria.
I think. Yeah, no, we went after Carolyn, and of course, the gentleman who played him, who passed recently, also for God's sakes, what's his name?
Frank Gardner, the guy who played Frank Gardner.
What's that?
Was it the guy who played Frank Gardner, the attorney?
No. Which one about Burke
Dr.
Devlin?
Guthrie.
No, Frank Gardner was played by somebody else, and that was Vickie's normal love in the first year. Now I know Anthony George played the second Burke Devlin, and the first, my
Just
God,
couldn't get it like Mitch Devlin now. It just wasn't the same. It just wasn't the same as the first one. He just didn't seem well. I mean, he was more. I think he was more. I don't know.
well, he was used to playing nice guys, and
Yeah.
The first Burke Devlin was took a lot of risks, took a lot of chances, and didn't mind getting into bar fights with Willie, and that was pretty decent, and but Anthony George went on to.
Second Willie.
I'm sorry.
A lot of people don't know there was two Willies.
Yeah.
That's very true.
The first Willie was more of a scumbag, I think. He would have been, I mean, as far as, Carlin's Willie.
Carlin's Willie was what was accepted. But the first Willie, he only lasted 5 episodes. And he's a very nice man, and he lives in California, and he's still around. And I've spoken with him from time to time. But I mean, time passes, and we did a lot of work back then in terms of prepping for the podcasts. We would research I would research the trivia. You guys would Keith Chago, who headed the enterprise back then and is currently taking a hiatus. Hello to Keith. Was literally instrumental in getting the team together, and I was quite fortunate, and I happened to step in at the right place at the right time, and I started and let me have my head, so I was running around trying to find people, a cast, crew, kind of thing. And we wound up interviewing some very interesting characters, right, Vickie?
Yeah, I got quite a few. We interviewed quite a few. David Selby, and we got Buzz. We did quite a few. We have Miss Parker, quite a few.
Hadge, Michael Hadge, who played Buzz, and
Yeah,
that
he was
was
an interesting fellow. Oh my God, he's what you'd expect. You know, he
oh
was
yeah,
just quite an interesting interview. I really enjoyed that one. He was really multi-layered. I mean, you wouldn't think it, you know, in the beginnings, but he was quite a nice individual to interview. I really enjoyed that one.
he wanted to go on Broadway, and he was kind of you know, they wanted him to stay, but he felt that you know, he felt that Dark Shadows was only a stepping stone, and I guess whether he became a playwright and he became friends with Al Pacino and
Yeah. Well, yeah, he did. He what was that? Oh gosh, that's eluding me. That one movie, Something Man, that he was in. Oh gosh, I can't stand it when I can't have my facts. But he did quite. He got into quite a few movies.
yeah, absolutely, and he so there were many people that got their start on Dark Shadows.
There was quite a few though, when you think about it, because you see, Maggie. Well,
Catherine Lee Scott.
yeah, I saw her on Little House on the Prairie the other day. I had no idea she
Yeah,
was on Little House on the Prairie.
an episode of that, and Catherine Lee Scott. I remember getting Catherine Lee Scott by going to
Oh
one
yeah,
of
we
those
talked to her quite a few times. Yeah, for
events.
Christmas and everything. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm. She
And
was
Laura,
She's a very gracious lady.
very supportive of the podcast. Very supportive.
yeah, Laura
And
Parker was on The Incredible Hulk. She played his
Yeah.
wife, I think. She was also on Kolchak the Night Stalker.
Yeah, and she did Race with the Devil. Excellent
Yeah.
flick. I love that movie.
Brenda Squid, yeah, she
She
was.
liked talk. I thought, if you remember correctly, that we interviewed her, she really liked to talk about for the other things that she did, because they were so much more than Dark Shadows by the time we got to them. I mean, they had whole careers after the fact, you know. So I mean, they just got their start there, but they did. She done quite a few interesting things.
I was I was talking to Daniel Ferens, who wrote Halloween 6, and when they had cast Mitch Ryan for
That's
the
it.
role of
That's
Doctor
right.
Wynn, they initially wanted Christopher Lee because Christopher Lee was initially offered the part of Dr. Sam Loomis
Was he really? I did not know that.
way back
That's
when,
interesting. I didn't either.
and he turned Carpenter down, and Christopher Lee said no to again for Halloween, and Mitch Ryan auditioned, and they said they liked him very much, and he was really excited to be there, and they're like, okay, we really like him, cast him. So they like they cast Mitch
Well, I
Ryan.
think Christopher Lee was already making a name for himself.
He was doing Hammer films and all that stuff back then. So yeah, he was pretty dug in as Dracula.
Absolutely, and I don't think he would. But you know, the whole thing was they only expected the Barnabas character to be on for a few weeks.
Yeah.
The whole story was for those who don't know it, that the series was a clunker in the ratings, and they had
You needed a
tried.
ghost to get it going.
They
Had
had
to have a
Laura.
ghost.
Yep, they had Laura. They had Diana Malay as Laura, and that was kind of cute. And then I think one of Dan Curtis's daughters said, "Why didn't you put a vampire in there?" And Dan says, "Well, what the heck we got to lose? We're going down the toilet anyway." So he got. You know, they looked around and they found Jonathan. And Jonathan, if you've ever met him, may rest in peace. He would have been 100 a few days ago. I think that was his 100th birthday. He died when he was 88. But Jonathan was he was a very intelligent man. He could speak to anything, literally. He was. I remember I was very fortunate to a few of the fans were invited, including myself, to his apartment in Manhattan, in the 80s, where he was perfecting a role, uh, doing narrative readings, ridiculousness and stuff like that, and we got a chance to see him in action. And he was uh, he was quite a character. He was quite a character, and I didn't know that he spoke Spanish fluently. I do from school, and I would have loved to have tutored him, but such is life. And people like Mary O'Leary, was very, very
She's a
strong
really nice
and
lady.
staunch supporter. And 7 Emmys, you can't sneeze at that. And she's a very nice person. I think that's,
Very much so. I
yeah,
enjoyed the film she put together. That
oh
was
yeah,
exceptionally good.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Give it
Julie,
a shameless plug.
back in your court,
What's you guys' favorite sets? Do you have one or have a couple on DS?
favorite set?
Yeah, favorite
Did-
set.
I like the crypt in the cemetery because one of my favorite characters was the guy who played the caretaker, and
The old guy, the
yeah,
really old guy. That
yeah,
guy had so much character. He
he
did.
was wonderful. Evil lurks here, evil,
Like
evil.
too, now that I think about it. Remember when they had all those wrestlers underneath? They were supposed to be coming up out of the ground, and they came up too soon.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. They had,
And you can tell, just be careful how you tip over those stones, those styrofoam.
Yeah.
oh, and of course, yeah. And if you didn't watch out, you could step over one of them, and
He was
they
economical
fall
at
over the
filming
trees.
anything.
The trees would also shake because the trees
Yeah.
were also paper mache or something like that.
But he made it work, though. He really did.
I think it was they called Jonathan a matinee idol, and to a sense, he truly was because he's the kind of kind of person that the kids would, and with his character, that the kids could go to on a Saturday afternoon in the local movie house and see. And of course, House of Dark Shadows, the first film, introduced him to uh, introduced him to the general public, and there was, although there were mixed reactions, made a lot of money for MGM, and it saved them from going into bankruptcy, from what I understand. So he was, but so many of them, my God. And the wonderful thing about literary license podcast again is the ability to go beyond just the regular recitation, and look for the act. Look, and some of them like John Lascelles, who played the in the first year he played that psychologist doctor that Laura killed in the car with fire, and he did a very good performance. But when I finally got to him in L.A., he passed recently, by the way. But when I finally got to him in L.A., he didn't want to. He just didn't want to know from me. There were some people that didn't want to go back, and they were more interested in living day to day. And you had to distinguish that between those people and those people that didn't mind talking about it, like Michael Hadge, who was very gracious, and who did buzz for us. And of course, Roger Davis helped us out a lot. Uh, he was on a number of things. He was always available for us. He was very generous, and certain things have been said about Roger, and I think a lot of that is unfair. But there is no doubt he showboated, but he regrets what he did, and he's 85 now and still kicking, and is into architecture, and you can't and that man has done so many things. He was into hotel management. Ran he ran a clothing firm. He did very famous voiceovers. Alias Smith Jones, of course, he's famous for. After Shadows, he was in a Sentinel episode of The Twilight Zone with Diana Hyland, where he played the husband. I don't know if you remember that, Jewel, but he played. But he was. It was a very interesting one to see. But anyway, um, so the favorite set, I
The
think
lab
would have.
sets, the labs with all the freaky Frankenstein shit. I mean, that was just like pulled out of Universal Monsters or something.
Oh yeah,
That's what they did with that.
they had all the
I mean,
old
that was a lot of
equipment.
fun, especially when
Uh,
they were doing Adam and Eve. That
You know,
stuff.
that's a good point, Vicky. I think that was certainly up there. I like the old house. I like the cemetery, and I also like the old house set. You know, Collinwood was too. Collinwood was, I mean, just essentially
I
a
wish we could have
rich.
saw more of like Colin Wood though, as opposed to just the one like the parlor room. We saw a lot of the parlor room, the front doors. I wish they would have done more. Like I guess they couldn't back then. It was a soap opera, but we want what we want. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
We were, and it's true, and we were, and of course, I'm biased, and people are going to say, but we were one of the first to really take Dark Shadows and dissect it, episode block by episode block.
Yeah,
And
did a lot
we
of.
got almost to the end, and I had some medical challenges, and I had to pull out, unfortunately,
A lot
before.
of episodes. I mean, it had a lot of sets, it had a lot of episodes to it, but I mean, it was kind of like a work of art when it was all kind of said and done towards the end. I mean, it could never, I never think that show could ever fully be recreated. It just happened at the right time, the right place. Everything was perfect for it to come together. And Dan Curtis, I don't even know if the Gulf War had happened, whether that second Dark Shadows would have taken off, but there were some very lovely sets to that very first. You
Oh,
know,
the
I don't
remake
know if you watched any of the new one. Well, the sort of
with
new one
Ben
from the
Cross,
90s.
the remake.
They canceled it because of the Gulf War with Ben Cross.
Yeah, that's a shame because I think that the first, the remake in '91, the first
I would
couple
have
of
liked to see what they
episodes,
could have
I
done with
think
it.
1 out of 4 people watched it. I mean, it had a great, those 2 episodes had a great following. And then the Gulf War took over,
Yeah.
and they had
Again,
it
though,
on
they
at
started
3
at
in the morning
episode
or something.
208. They were not going to show any of the Diana Malay or the Phoenix or anything. Barnabas is the start of the show.
Yeah. Yeah. Ben Cross did a hell of a job playing
He
his own
did. He
right.
was a
Oh, yeah.
sexy player too. I
Yeah.
mean, he just had something about him 30 years ago. I was watching some horror movies the other day ago with Ben Cross in it, and I'm going, man, he must have been desperate to have to do these. It's like 2002, 2000. You know what I'm saying, Joel? When you get to that point where you start seeing your favorite actor show up, it's like, what the hell?
Some of my favorite horror movies are cheesy horror movies. Like
Oh,
I'll
they're
watch.
all cheesy. The best
Right,
ones are
right.
cheesy. Every one of them's cheesy. What was I watching the other day ago? This children shouldn't play with dead things. Scared the shit out of me when I was a little kid. I was watching it 2 days ago. I go, what the hell is wrong with me? In retrospect. Scared me to death, that movie did. I mean, literally, could not sleep alone for weeks.
There's nothing wrong. As a matter of fact, you're probably one of the few women I know who really, really enjoy the genre. The way,
Like grotesserie. Oh yeah, I can
But
sit there and eat a 5-course meal. My husband's just like, what the hell is wrong with you? We're watching Saw. It's like, did you see that? No,
yeah,
it's good, clean fun.
I was joking around with Alan Gallant when he was a guest on the channel because he appears frequently too. I said, "Have you ever seen Freddy's Dead?" And he's like, "No." He said, "What?" I said, "Listen, the most scariest thing in that movie is not Freddy Krueger; it's Roseanne Barr." So, so, so you
I
know,
know, shit, when you think about it. I mean, yeah, you're right.
yeah.
I never thought about it before.
So I always get people with that. They look at me like, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sure. I'm real sure." But I first watched DS when I was 14. When I was a teenager, I was just going into high school, and I watched it from the beginning, and it hooked me. My mother got me into horror. I was 8 when I was 8 years old. My mom showed me John Carpenter's Halloween,
good for
and she
her.
You had
and
a
then she
good
and then
mom.
and then she
Good for
left
her.
You right.
and then she left me to my own devices. And yeah, the rest is history. I went through a plethora of horror movies and westerns with my grandfather, and so
What's it with westerns and grandfathers? My
yeah,
grandfather and me, he was from Italy. He loved them. We had
yeah,
westerns all Saturday.
yeah. Now I collect Blu-ray westerns and horror movies. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Grandpa.
Yeah,
So
same here.
what? So you guys said your favorite, some of your favorite sets. What's from characters who, because Angelique was killed off a bunch of times and then brought back, but she wasn't
Yeah,
really dead.
Cassandra.
Was she like the Kenny of South Park in a way at
Kenny of
times?
South Park, kind of, sort of, don't you think so? Because she
Yeah.
came back. How many? Well, I mean, Julia came back several. Well, they did a lot of time hopping though. That's why we had so many different characters.
Yeah.
But I mean, Angelique constantly was getting reinvented. I mean, she was coming back as Cassandra. What else did she come back as, Tom? She had several different. Then she came back as a vampire. She was the vampire there for a while.
Yeah.
And I mean, when you think about it, Barnabas finally realizes he loves her at the very end. Isn't that a real bitch? I mean,
That
all
was that was
1,000
such a
episodes.
disappointment. That was such, and we asked Lara Parker about it, and she said, "Well, we just did what the writers told us.
Yeah.
We didn't really care whether it was wrong or not, but the fans were absolutely shocked at the time to find out that Barnabas loved Angelique all along, and I think that was in 1840, of course, and it's Valerie Collins, I believe, and it was just something. And the other thing, I think, and it was brilliantly done when in 1897, Pansy Faye, Nancy Barrett, staked
Oh, I forgot about her.
Barnabas. She
Yeah.
staked him, and everybody thought and actually Jonathan went off to do Murder in the Cathedral or one of those plays, and so he
Yeah.
took some time off, and so they killed him off. They killed the Barnabas character. You thought the Barnabas character was killed off, and people were, we couldn't believe it, and
Well, they put Nathan Selby in though, was to give Barnabas some relief on the show, because then you had the werewolf dynamic going after that.
that's funny too, because if you think of it, that was the most well-dressed werewolf I've ever seen on
David
TV or
Selby.
the movies. He always had this tie and lounge suit and jacket, and he was,
You
and
have
of
to learn
course,
any lines too. Remember, we were talking to him. It's like, well, you didn't really have to worry about working too hard the first few weeks. He goes, no. He goes, I didn't say shit because he didn't. He just stood there and stared and looked scary.
Yeah,
he was fortunate. The same thing with Kate Jackson. All she did was stare for a couple
Oh,
of
that's right.
months.
She was a ghost for a while too. I
That's
think was
right.
it Jim Storm was talking about that one time. Who had the better scowl? Was it
He
him?
also stared. Yeah, he also stared, and he had that famous scowl which I would tease him about. Jim Storm, in
Jim Storm
actuality,
had a good scowl too.
what's that?
Jim Storm had a good scowl too. They made him
Yeah,
look really dark and
but
unnatural, just
I was
like.
gonna, I was gonna say that Jim Storm, and we interviewed Jim and his wife Valerie, who was a retired physician, um, Valerie Pronto, and
She's a nice
she,
lady.
yeah, they are really nice
They
people.
are the friendliest couple you ever want.
They are
They are
really.
just so nice. Yeah.
I mean, there were some people we tried to interview that were, that kind of thing. Who are you? But not people like Storm. Selby, I think, was very friendly.
He was.
Uh, Roger, Catherine Lee Scott devoted a lot of time to helping it when she realized that we really were serious about it, because I had to tell her about it at this New York Dark Shadows thing that I went to. And she got Lara Parker to help us out, and it was. And after that, we interviewed Robert Rodan, Adam.
That's what I was just thinking. But that was such a. He was really unwell when he did that interview, and
Yep,
he was so
yep.
so sweet. I think his daughter was with him. He didn't last much longer after that. We were just
Few
lucky enough
months.
to get an interview with him before he passed, and he was very coherent, and he was such a nice man. It was such a sad interview too, though, because you knew he was dying when we did it.
It was rough, but he did it, and he actually looked at a few of the episodes
Yeah,
uh,
to remind
where he
himself.
played
Yeah.
Adam prior to being interviewed by us, and it was very heartwarming. And we were joking around with him, and I showed him a piece of little chicken, from the thing where Willie taunts
Oh,
him
the
with the
chicken.
chicken.
Oh,
So I
wait,
showed him
wait,
a
wait. The chicken. Oh, the
chicken leg.
chicken. Oh, the chicken leg. Yeah, I remember what you're talking about
And I
now.
arranged it with him before. I said, "Do you mind if you do the Adam yell when I pulled out the chicken leg?"
Oh, he was gonna. Okay, because he wanted to kill.
Yeah.
Our,
Keith. Oh no, Keith was mad at me because I ate the chicken afterwards. He said, "You don't eat the chicken during the podcast." I said, "Well, what can I tell you?" But he was like, I said, he goes, yeah. He was a
they
good
did. They
sport.
stole everything right out of Universal Monsters. He did. Dan
Mm.
Curtis. When you think about it, that was
Yeah.
just it was
Oh,
all
he loved. No, he loved
monsters.
that as a kid. Sure.
Because of the werewolf, the vampires, the ghosties, all of it. I mean, you could tell his love of horror
He
came early on.
he milked.
They were
It's a
like,
well-known fact. He milked all the plots that he could. The only thing he really didn't touch was a mummy. But even there, Laura.
we didn't have mummies, did we?
No,
No.
they didn't. Except Laura in 1897. She apparently burned in Alexandria, in Egypt,
Oh,
and I
yeah. Well, we had
that
some Egyptian something going on there. What was it? Quentin had to go, and didn't Quentin have to go to Alexandria? And
that's right.
yeah,
That's
it's
that's
coming
right.
back to
That
me now. It's been a
Mm.
while since I.
He ran off with Edward's wife. Good times.
Yes,
Yeah, well, Laura
he was
was
such a
Edward's
yes. He was
wife.
a
And
cad. He
the
was also
story is,
yeah.
Diana Malay wanted to come back, but she wanted to play Laura.
Mm.
And Curtis said, "Well, give her Laura. I'll bride her in." And they were doing 1897, and it turned out to be really good because you had Laura versus Angelique, and that was quite a matchup. I think they could have maybe done a little better with that, but that's my own personal. But the fact that they even did it, I think was really good. But I think, for people who are used to seeing Laura always get away, well, Angelique came and got hers in the end. Anyway,
What's you guys' favorite time traveling storyline?
Vickie, you want to take that?
I'm trying to think. It's definitely going to be the 1795 storyline. when Victoria Winters goes back in time, because a lot of people weren't expecting the time hop to come. The first one was definitely the most memorable because you had all of the crazy dynamic going on where, she was going to be, hung as a witch, and, you had the romance start with that. And there was just so much happening during that storyline. There was just so many different things going on. I just thought it was just one of his strongest, storylines. The 1840s was interesting, but when we got to the weird astronomical people, then it started getting Lovecraftian and crazy.
You've been concentrating, Jewel, on the Leviathan part. I
The
see that on
Leviathan part. I mean,
Facebook.
everybody had me ready to hate that, but I actually enjoyed the Leviathan storyline. I liked it.
I'm actually doing the Leviathan arc tomorrow with Kristen and Kara from Between the Shadows. And I've been revisiting it, and there's a picture of Dr. Julie Hoffman refusing the Leviathan box, and what it made me really think of is when Ripley has the flamethrower or something from Alien. I said, all she needs now is a flamethrower. So
she kind of does.
Like if somebody here, Dr. Hoffman, here's a flamethrower. Take care of them now. But no. It's a really interesting arc. I think it's very, very underrated. You have Jeb Hawks, and I really love Dennis Patrick returning as Paul Stoddard. That was real.
That was interesting. That was interesting. Although I did like Jason. I loved it. Witty. I love Jason McGuire. And I think that was it was a shame that he was kind of killed off, but at least they brought him back. And
he was the guy you love to hate because you really wanted to kill him half the time, especially when he was after Mrs. Stoddard all the time. It's like, leave her alone. He was such an excellent actor. I mean, a lot of those early episodes. I mean, just those storylines were just excellent. I could see where, I guess that was like when soaps were really starting to get in gear. I mean, Search for Tomorrow was starting up, and you had all of the As the World Turns, One Life to Live, all of them, but you only had one Dark Shadows. I mean, you just can't replicate that. No, I don't think you could if you wanted to, if you could.
If you hear
I think it's unfortunate. I think if the 91 a series had been picked up, they had planned, I think, to go into the Quentin arc and do the 1890. That's what I heard, and they planned to do. I think the guy that played Joe Haskell on the 91 show was going to do Quentin. That's what I heard. And
I just don't think Dan Curtis's heart was into this the second time around. He just didn't. I don't think he wanted to do it.
Well, Kurt, I mean, the story, of course, the ratings were, David Hennessy mentioned that they used to have
a chance for ratings, though. I mean, it was 8 episodes, I think.
Well, the new Dark Shadows is 12 episodes. It was 12 episodes. Yeah, but David Hennessy told an excellent story when she was interviewed by Penny Dreadful about the ratings for all the networks being on the second floor, a copy of the ratings by the elevators, and it was changed daily. And he looked and saw that at one point reruns of Gomer Pyle were getting more viewers than Dark Shadows. And that was unfortunate. That was unfortunate. I think that people had decided it was Housewives and Kids, but in its heyday, they stopped Wall Street early to watch that show. College kids cut classes to watch that show. It was great.
Yeah, this nerd here still watches the show.
I started watching it again. It's on Tubi. I keep throwing it on in the background now.
I'm very glad that they finally brought it back. When they first started the reruns in the late 70s, And I'll never forget. And of course, this was before it went on NBC, and I heard it was on a UHF station. There's my age coming through. A UHF station in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, and I used to take. I had a little portable TV set, and I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with a fire, facing a fire escape, and in the living room, and I took the TV set, put it on the windowsill, and then I took one of those coffee table things with silver plating. I think it was a Lazy Susan they used to call them, and you could turn it around if you wanted candy or something. So I put that next to the UHF antenna, and it came in. It was on 11:30 at night, which helped also, because that was later on at night. There weren't as many TV stations on the air blocking it. And a cousin of mine who worked for Bell Labs said to me, "Well, what you did was you used that as a natural amplifier." And that was how I was able to see the first few. And my God, it was just such a treat for me to see that again. And then of course the conventions, Kathy Resh's conventions, which in my mind, I mean, she treated everybody like family. I love those conventions. Kathy and Marcy Robin.
Did any of the remaining stars, did they get out and do any of the cons anymore? I mean, have there been any decent ones out lately? I mean, I haven't heard, I haven't seen. So, I mean, and I'm in Dallas, so I haven't heard anything of it. So
they stopped after the 50th anniversary. Jim Pearson, who works with MPI and cons, there wasn't enough of an interest to continue with that, and it was a big thing to set up, getting the stars, getting planes, getting the people, and you spent the same 1,100 people coming, which was nice, but it wasn't like Star Trek. I mean, I was always envious that Star Trek had so much more of a fandom. Where they expected. I was at the first Star Trek convention in '71.
Those people are diehard. They're just diehard.
I was in high school, and my English science fiction buff got tickets, and they expected 300 people, and they got 3,000 now. Why the hell could Shadows do that? And I think that the reason is that focused on more. Shadows focused on the more negative gothic stuff, whereas Star Trek talks about a hopeful future. In 1995, that was interesting. Everybody was either dead or crazy, and Selby is crazy in 1995, and for Elliot Stokes with his double hearing, like walking around, and nobody wanted to talk about it. And Mrs. Johnson was found dead in front of a tree, and when you compare that to Star Trek with the whole stuff and exploring, all
Sorry, Tom, you were cutting out. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Where did you? I was saying that Star Trek versus Dark Shadows. I think that Star Trek was a much better, had much more positive, optimistic outlook. Whereas Dark Shadows dealt with traditional harm, with all its negative implications. So people, Star Trek had more of a fandom than Dark Shadows. I was always envious of that. That's the way it went.
Yeah.
Star Trek had a lot of enthusiasm. It did.
It can't all be sunshine and rainbows, damn it.
No, can't.
That's what I'll say.
in Collinwood, you can have thunderstorms. And,
That's right.
That's all it does, though, is always a thunderstorm at Collinwood. When is there not a thunderstorm? Does the sun ever shine in Maine? Okay.
Of course it does. Barnabas has to go in his coffin, right? So it's signed sometime.
Everybody knows where that secret room is, too. You know, the secret room in the mausoleum. It's not so freaking secret, okay? Everybody knows where that thing is. No secret.
Yes, that is true. Like, especially parallel time, like everybody knows where it is. It's like it's no use hiding here.
Doesn't even matter if you're in the 1900s. They know where it is too.
Yeah. Tom, I don't think you answered what was your favorite timeline, did you?
Me or Tom?
Tom.
Timeline.
Time travel story.
Actually, you mentioned parallel time, and I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah.
I really did. And parallel time 1970, and the different people have made different choices and so forth. And they were trying to get Marie Wallace, who played Eve, they were trying to get her back. And she was going to play Maggie's sister. And they actually had a phone conversation with Maggie talking to the sister in New York, and it was just like a basically. But at that point, she was involved in Another World, Somerset, I believe, Marie Wallace. But also a very nice person, and loves the fans, and keeps Sharon Smythe, or Sharon Smith, whatever, who played Sarah, little Sarah Collins, who was also extremely one of the friendliest in terms of the fans. So you have people that really, you have actors and actresses that really cared about the fans back then.
They did too.
Yeah.
They knew that the fans are what drove Dark Shadows. That was the best part about it all, is they loved the fans. They really, truly loved their fans. And it's you don't see that kind of devotion, that give and take anymore, like you did with them. You really didn't.
If either of you guys could take any fictional character and bring them to Collinsport, who would it be?
Bring him into Collinsport. Indiana Jones. Let's bring Indiana Jones to Collinsport. That ought to stir shit up.
Yeah, he'd be swinging through the chandeliers, that would be fun.
Well, it definitely gets some excitement going in the town, Think about it.
Yeah.
He's an archaeologist. He's a good-looking guy. He wants to hang.
And George Carolyn,
It kind of suits an archaeologist with all these other, paranormal stuff going on. So, I mean, why not?
Sure. I really like Sherlock Holmes. What's up between Sherlock Holmes and Spock? And
Sherlock Holmes would be great.
Yeah.
And Sherlock Holmes would have been, the inventor of a vicious vampire or something like that. Holmes is another literary.
A whole lot of vampires on there, though. Let's see. I mean, Laura Parker was a vampire for a while. We had the obvious. Who else was a full bona fide vampire?
Kirk Wilkins became a vampire. Roxanne Drew was a vampire.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Dirk, Roger Davis is probably. Roger Davis feels that Dirk was one of his best roles.
Dirk, that's right. Oh, I forgot about Dirk. Oh my God, I totally forgot about that part. Yeah.
Angelique was a vampire, like you guys are both saying.
Yeah. She was a captive vampire. Why couldn't she leave the house? I mean, most vampires can leave the house, Not her.
It's like, Nicholas, dude, what are you doing? She's not underage. She can leave.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
And of course, remember the Walker, Marcia Mason, who played when she was just starting out, played a vampire for one episode.
Yeah.
And one of Barnabas's doxies, as they used to call it, you meet him on the docks and so forth. And that was kind of fun. And Susan Sullivan, who played Josette's ghost, I mean, there were other actors and so forth. The one who played Josette's, the one who did the voiceover of Josette crying or weeping, and she was also pretty famous, and she was in Up the Down Staircase with Sandy Dennis. There were a lot of there were a lot of there were a lot of people who were just starting out that had these bit roles on Dark Shadows, and it's kind of interesting to see.
Mayor
Uh,
Davis, he had a brilliant career, you know.
Yeah.
oh yeah, it's kind of interesting to see how they just meandered through that show on the way, and it was so different from the other soap opera. The other soap operas of the day is boy meets girl, boy gets girl pregnant, girl gets boy marries girl, boy deals with in-laws, everything's in the kitchen or the living room or the hospital. Dark Shadows was boy meets girl, boy bites girl, boy turns girl into vampire. Uh, you know, girl girl
Can't forget
attacks the town.
Travis. Can't forget Jerry Lacey playing the mean, crazy Spanish Inquisition guy, you know.
Oh,
Uh,
Can't
Reverend
forget
Trask.
that.
Reverend Trask. Oh,
Right.
Jerry Lacey was marvelous. He was marvelous as Trask. And thankfully, he's just gotten over he has an orthopedic injury, and he's just gotten over that. And he was in. They all got together to do that Christmas Carol thing, I think last year, and it was one of Mitch Ryan's last performances before he passed. But there was a scare about David Selby recently. Somebody thought that David Selby had died, but it turned out it was somebody with the same name as him. So he's still around and kicking. He's still pretty
Oh
darn
God,
good.
David Selby. You remember Jesse, don't you? Jesse was one of our younger people on the
Oh
show.
yeah,
He
yeah, yeah, yeah.
was definitely a junior to me, let's put it that way. But we were interviewing David Selby, and he had asked Jesse something about something or other, and he looked at Jesse, you know, and he goes, "You thought I was dead, didn't you?" Because Jesse couldn't figure it out. And we were laughing because David Selby goes, "You all thought I was dead." I go, "I knew you were alive still." But Jesse did probably think you were dead. And I mean, I couldn't stop laughing. I was like, Jesse was horrified, poor kid. But I mean, he was a joker. I enjoyed David Selby. He was a really good interview. He
David
was
Selby
wondering where
was.
we had to, I just, they forget about stuff. So when you bring up stuff that you talked, you know, they're going, "Where did you read about this?" Like, well, you're the one that did it, you know. Like when he was on the Joan Rivers show, he didn't remember, you know, he was, what do you call it, juggling airplane bottles of liquor on the Joan Rivers show. But I happened to find it, so I asked him about it. So
Oh, that's funny. Oh, that's funny. Well, Selby, of course, went on, and I mean, you look at Selby's
Falcon
career, it
Crest and all that other
skyrocketed.
stuff. Yeah.
Barbara Streisand and Up the Sandbox, and then from there doing Falcon Crest, I think he was on,
Yeah.
and he was quite. And then you had that mini series, Washington Behind Closed Doors, which I got to see one of these years, and it had Lara Parker in it and Thayer David and I think Selby, uh, and um, and of course Dan Curtis's work because he wanted to go to Hollywood. That's basically he kind of lost interest in Shadows at the end because they ran out of plots. But it was really the ratings. It was really the ratings, and there was a big deal. And of course, it's out now, but there was a big deal with Jonathan did not want to be in the second movie, like The Dark Shadows. Dan Curtis wanted him to reprise his role as Barnabas. Fridge's stuff that it was handled too much blood and gore. Didn't have enough of Barnabas's sentimentality, and Curtis was going to fire him. and write them out of the script. And it's according to Mary. And then the show was canceled. So it didn't make really a difference anyway. So he went and played Bramwell. And I thought Bramwell was interesting, but it could never take the place of the Barnabas character, in my view, because he was when people think of shadows nowadays, they think of Barnabas, and they think, where is that guy now?
Well, he was the first vampire with a conscience. Up until that point, we'd just seen Hammer films and Bela Lugosi and stuff like that. We weren't used to seeing a vampire with a conscience, you know?
That's exactly why I don't think Christopher Lee would have worked, because Christopher Lee was used to playing the traditional
I
Dracula.
just can't imagine Christopher Lee doing that part. I don't know why. I mean, I love Christopher Lee, but I just can't see him being Barnabas.
Dr. Loomis, you mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think of Christopher Lee. I think bloodshot eyes, big teeth. You know. Yeah.
Both he and Peter Cushing turned the role of Dr. Loomis down. So they were asked back in 1978 because John Carpenter wanted Peter Cushing or Christopher Lee, and they both turned him down. And then Donald Pleasance, when one of his daughters was a fan of, was called on Precinct 13, and he auditioned, and he needed the money because he needed to make alimony payments. So they had him for 3 days.
Always something.
Yeah, they had him for 3 days of shooting, and that was it.
That's cute.
That's cute. I mean, I can't imagine him not being that role though in Halloween. I can't imagine another actor doing that role. I can't imagine Peter Cushing. Well, I can imagine Peter Cushing doing it, but Donald Pleasance just suits that role. I mean, as the Doctor.
Yeah.
Just did.
Yeah, he played it a bunch of times. Again, my two biggest favorite franchises are Dark Shadows and Halloween. So
I have to ask, what did you think about Halloween the kills at the last two? Were you happy with those?
No. But here's.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. But I've watched them several times. I don't hate them.
I think if when you bring back familiar characters for simple nostalgia instead of story,
instead of a quality story.
Sure, okay, Charles Cypress. You had Charles Cypress there. The flashback sequences shouldn't have been told through. They should have been told through Charles Cypress, not the other guy. For 78, that was just dumb. And there was no point to that movie. So, unfortunately,
there wasn't a point to the last two at all. But I felt compelled to watch them because I had come through since 1978, so I was not going to give up now. So.
You know who does a really good, though I don't like the movie, who does a really good job in Ends, is Rohan Campbell, who played Corey Cunningham. He did do a good job.
Yes.
What they asked him to do, he did exactly what he was supposed to do. So he gets too much heat for all the wrong reasons, and it's not his fault.
Yeah.
He didn't write the movie, kids.
No, he did.
So start blaming the writers more. But
I always blame the writers. I've always blamed the writers.
Yeah. Look, one of my favorite installments is Halloween Resurrection. That had Busta Rhymes in it. Okay, I enjoy cheesy movies, but
that's cheesy. That's cheesy.
Yes. But I do think if you're going to make a trilogy out of Halloween,
it doesn't really follow one uniform timeline. No, I mean, 1 and 2. That's it. Yeah. And I guess you could try to connect the dots with the other ones. And when Rob Zombie gets into the picture, forget it. There is no timeline.
There's a really great interview in Fangoria of Rob, but done by Justin Beam,
did he get mad at him? I can't remember or not.
No, for Halloween 2, for his Halloween 2, there was a lot of studio interference. There was really a lot, And so it gets into that in that interview. If you can go track it down, read it.
I'm going to track that down because I haven't seen it.
It's really good.
Because there was a couple other interviews where Rob Zombie was less than happy that they thought that his movie sucked, his Halloween movie. He does not like hearing that you don't like his Halloween movie. So if you ever interview him, you love it, okay?
I do want to interview him because I know he likes House of Dark Shadows. I do want to get him on for House of Dark Shadows.
He'd be a great interview. We were supposed to interview him a couple years ago, but something happened. Life got busy. Never happened. But yeah, he likes to talk if you can get him.
Yeah, I love to listen, so I'll go for that. What's you folks' favorite special effect? Vickie first.
Oh, but the special favorite. Oh God, that's going to be hard. Because it was, well, I guess when I think special effects, I'm thinking more modern. But I mean, I've always got a kick out of the bat, and the dream sequences. Or what was the dream thing? Oh God,
the dream curse.
The dream curse, and they would do that stuff with the dream curse. I kind of like
dry ice. The dry ice that would come up out of the garbage cans. It was really funny because I think in one of the sequences they left the sanitation company sticker on one of the garbage cans where the dry ice was coming up, which was kind of, you really have to look. One of the things that I enjoyed was it being able to come back on Amazon Prime, and that was the first time that I really had a chance to look at the entire. And especially, doing, and I did it again when I was on the podcast, because the first time I watched it was with my fiance, soon-to-be wife, and I got her into it. She was like, "Oh, it's in black and white. I don't want to watch it because it's in black and white." And I said, "No." I go, keep with it. Keep with it. It's going to get better. It's going to get better."
I love black and white.
Yeah.
What?
I love black. I did.
Well, it was really.
But I love it now.
It was really, and they call it chiaroscuro, and it was really. I mean, horror, which deals with the past, the shades of gray and the darkness and so forth. It's really fit for black and white stuff, and of course it was very interesting in color when it went to color, and I think it was
mirror action going on.
They made a big deal out of it too. Dark Shadows will be shown in color.
Yeah. Remember the ads towards the end, though? That's wasn't a special effect, but I used to get a kick out of the ads at the end where they would talk and say, thanks to this store, this person who dressed these, the actors or whatever, such at Beverly Hills, or, I mean, you just don't hear that personalization in anything anymore. I mean, everything is so digitized, and I mean, we have truly lost something. I mean, we've gained a lot of special effects and everything else, but we've really lost that. I mean, like I said, that element of Dark Shadows could never happen except in that time frame. I mean, now it would just be like a pinball game, It'd be a video game. It wouldn't have happened the way it did. It wouldn't have made history the way it did.
I like the blue screen effect. And the reason I liked the blue screen effect was because there were so many bloopers involving them. At one point, I mean, Angelique is looking at the mirror, and you actually see them rolling the blue screen onto the set to shoot the damn thing. And it was hilarious. It really was. But when it was done right, it was perfect. And but it wasn't always done right, and sometimes the screen was above the mirror, and you had to, it was a small mirror that she was looking into, and you had to make sure it was. But it was really cool. The Dream Curse effects also, I think, were with the
The curse went on for a long time. The dream curse went on and on and on. Just like, did we ever know we were ever going to get to the end of the dream curse?
it was, I mean, everybody was, I mean, it went through everybody, you know, and it gave them a chance because I understand they used to plan a while in advance, and they'd get together and have these midnight meetings or 24 hour. They would sleep in the offices and think of the ideas and stuff like that. And I think the dream curse was a good thing for them because they were able to think of further things to do. And time travel it obviously worked for 1795. And what I liked about that's my favorite period. What I liked about it was is that they went back a couple of times to 1796, and they made it. They gave it an extra year, you know, to because a year had passed, and then they go into 1795 again, and never really explained. But it was still very interesting in terms of them trying to change history, and they were able to change certain elements but not others. Similar to Rod Serling again in the Twilight Zone with the famous episode with the killing of Abraham Lincoln, where the guy goes back in time and was not able to prevent the death of Abraham Lincoln, but was able to see somebody who used to serve him as a butler come back as a big shot. So the point being that you can change some things and you can't change others, and you can't change the major events, but you can change little minor events that aren't going to have too much of an effect. And one wonders. One wonders what you're going to be able to do. But anyway, the blue screen was marvelous, and I think that he should have. And I'm glad they used that.
Yeah, I'm a simple man. I love the vampire fans.
So would they just turn around and pop them in?
Yeah, yeah.
I never ever noticed them doing that, to tell you the truth. And I mean, I never ever caught them popping their fangs in.
So Lara Parker, I mean, she'd look, and there was one time when you see her take something in her hand and put them in her mouth, and you knew that was the fangs. And but they never really. Of course, the first time Fred wore fangs, a famous story is that he put them in upside down, and he was about to bite Maggie, and he realized he put the fangs in upside down, so he just smiled, and you could see the fangs that should have been on the top jutting out from the bottom.
Did you guys ever notice, though, they had Barnabas looking more creepy and scary looking with the eyebrows, though, in the beginning? They made him look more like the scary old pervert vampire, dirty old man vampire, as opposed to this the regular Barnabas look. They did that a couple of times, I noticed, and then you just didn't see it again.
Then when you went back to 1795, you saw him before he became a vampire, and he was just a rich kid working in his father's shipping office.
Well, nobody looked like they were in their 20s. They were supposed to be 20 in their early 30s, but no one looked like they were in their 20s.
Well, Fred was in his 40s at the time, but they were able to do a pretty good job with him. Then of course when he became a vampire, then they put the blood on him and everything, and they made him look. But I think it was the black and white stuff that really emphasized
his eyebrows.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know the scene I'm talking about. I know you know what I'm thinking about, because I mean it was close up, and I think he was looking through the window once upon a time. I mean, he just looked scary, and I don't know why they didn't go that change. I guess it was too hard to do.
With candlelight.
Yeah. It was too hard to do. You know.
There's also that. Yeah, there's also that scene where Willie is making the coffin for Maggie, and Jonathan's standing behind him, and you see he's like, "Aren't you proud of your work or something?" I'm thinking, dude, he's building a coffin. Like, I don't think he ain't happy doing it at all.
Now there's another cane whipping coming for Willie. Willie.
Listen, House of Dark Shadows, we get to see the cane whooping. I mean, that's nice.
Yeah, I know. We don't see no caning in the series. Yeah, you see him get his ass whooped in the movie.
I think what they did have was if he was beating up Willie, you saw him just raise. You saw Jonathan raise the cane and go, and you heard the clap.
Yeah.
And then you see Carlin is like, oh,
yeah. We have to bite on the wrist too. We bite
yeah. Well,
we don't bite the men on the neck.
Yeah.
We don't want anybody thinking any of that funny business is going on.
They explored the idea of Roxanne biting Julia, and actually, having the lesbian vampire scenes, and they didn't go ahead with it because they figured it would never get past the
That would have sent my brothers right home from school every day if they thought
would have made me take off. Would have made me cut class for the first time in my life, probably. I'm telling you, that would have been something, and
that would have got ratings.
That would have helped the ratings. I really think it would have helped the ratings. And there is an alternative life. A lot of alternative lifestyle people really like Lara Parker. And she has a very fierce fandom, I understand.
Oh yes, she does.
So the fandom is not just it's the subculture.
Subculture love Dark Shadows. I mean, they
absolutely
love it more than we do. I mean, they do. They love it. They totally dig on it.
Absolutely, sure.
We do get to see Barnabas hit Adam with the cane. We see that contact.
Who'd he hit? Oh,
Adam,
yes.
Adam.
That's right. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. That was a mistake. I'll tell you, that was
Willie.
Surprised Adam didn't break the cane in two.
That's right. Adam hated Willie, though.
Yeah.
But you didn't see any mean. I mean, there was this menacing possibility that Barnabas might kill David at one point.
Yeah.
And and they really played
David
that.
David had it coming though, and so many times. David was such a little butthead. When you think about it, just what a brat he was. I mean, think of the things he used to do to everybody. I mean, he was always. I remember when he put the string on the staircase because he wanted to trip Louis Edmonds. I mean, this is daytime television, okay?
It's a hell of a lot different from General Hospital, which preceded that. And that was how I got to, back in the 60s, I started to watch General Hospital because I think I got home, when I was in junior high school, I got home at around 3 o'clock. And so I would watch General Hospital and see Meg Baldwin and Lee Baldwin and Tom Baldwin. You know who I'm talking about, Vickie. And Dr. Hardy and Lucy and the sister Lucille March. Lucille March and the sister. Now, Clampton, put that scalpel down. That was really. And then you had Dark Shadows, and what a change! What a change! And then, of course, One Life to Live started at 3:30. And we know what happened with that. And there, of course, was James Storm, was the first Lowry Wallach, and was replaced by his brother, Michael Storm.
Yeah.
There's a really cute, really interesting picture of the two of them in doctor's uniform, in the elevator or something like that.
I remember Jim was on Bold and the Beautiful. I mean, they've all done the rounds.
Oh, yeah.
Bold and the Beautiful is the closest thing to X-rated you can get during the daytime. Bold and the Beautiful is the worst. It's raw. It really is.
That's for sure.
There's nothing left to the imagination. There's no more love in the afternoon.
There's plenty of lust in the afternoon.
That's all it is. There's no love in the afternoon. Because my mother would sit me. We had to watch Young and the Restless. I've been watching that since that show started. That's how my mother was. My mother's 93 and still watches it. My father watches it with her.
They had some cute women on the list, so I remember. But Love is a Many Splendid Thing. That was another thing. And David Burney was on that, and Donna Mills. And but you just got to kind of. My grandmother's favorite show was As the Water Turns. So
Yeah.
I have no idea why she liked that show. I think I think she had a crush on Grandpa. The guy.
But they tried to. General Hospital did, but they had a show spinoff called Port Charles. They tried to go the vampire
Port
route.
Charles, yeah, they
tried
did.
really. They tried to do a spinoff with monsters and things. They just couldn't do it. It
Because
just not grab like the
they
other.
didn't get
It
it
just
because
not
they
grab.
didn't get it. They didn't get it, and of course there were no bloopers at that point because they would tape everything in advance. So, and I think that the bloopers again, that's an endearing quality of Dark Shadows.
It is. It really
other soaps don't have.
I love the blooper parts. We did the bloop. Tom would do bloopers, just the bloopers for.
You remember?
That show.
Yeah, I did them every podcast. I did. It was a special.
There were so many.
Oh my God! There were four. Would count 40 in a show block that we would do, and I would say I can't. It'll be like people will be. I think Keith had to edit some of them out because it just would have taken too long.
Yeah.
You know, and as it was, the length of the podcast was like 3 hours.
Sometimes,
We'd be on there for 3 hours, and oh my God, I was exhausted by the time that they'd get over, and you spend a lot of time prepping, but it was all worth it. I think that Vickie, Keith, and I left a permanent legacy to the memory of the series, and it's all in the internet somewhere, and
out in the void. Somewhere out in the void.
Yeah. And Jewel, thank you for inviting me, and I'm sure Vickie appreciates.
Well, before you go, you're both more than welcome back. I'd love to have you back on.
Well, thank you.
Always. Anytime, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll set something up again because I want to have you both back on. I love talking DS, so maybe we'll have a Halloween discussion one day. Who knows?
We'll definitely have to have a Halloween discussion. I'm being on my best behavior here. I'm never usually this well behaved on a podcast.
I'm a universal classic horror fan, so
go.
I'm so I love.
Sorry,
I want lots of blood cannons.
I do have one question for you guys before you go. Obviously, we know Mark B. Perry has been trying to shop his series around. Dark Shadows didn't have mummies. What's the one thing you'd want to see in a new Dark Shadows?
Go
ahead, Vickie.
Well, you know what? Okay, Angelique. Well, she was a beautiful blonde bombshell. But I mean, if Angelique actually came from the tropics, Angelique would not be a beautiful blonde. She'd probably be a beautiful brown woman. I'd be interested to see how they work that dynamic in the storyline. I would be really curious to see how. I mean, the really witchy stuff would really ensue then because she'd be like a bruja, you know.
Yeah.
Huh? It's an impossible thing. I'd like to see all the original cast back.
Back together for one more. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
Get
them out of their graves. You know, I mean, in Dark Shadows, you never really died. You always came back as something else.
Yeah.
And I would have loved to have seen a sequel. You know, they were planning this Christmas Carol thing. that they did last year, I believe, was something that Dan Curtis originally talked about in terms of having them do a primetime, having the Dark Shadows cast do a Christmas Carol primetime special. It never came to fruition.
Oh, that would have been great too.
Yeah, yeah, it would have been interesting. You know, you could have Fred playing Scrooge and dress him up and would be, and they got plenty. Oh, they would have had Jeremiah in chains and play
Oh,
that.
that's right, Jeremiah in chains, and you'd have Josette with her messed up face, or like where she plummeted off of Widow's Hill.
Where she it looked like a fried egg on her face.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what that was, but yeah,
Yeah,
that scared me when I was little.
that
One.
kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I would love to see them bring cat people in the Dark Shadows.
Bring what?
Cat people.
Yeah.
Val Luton,
Yeah, that would.
Val Luton stuff.
Yeah.
She would have been that would have been interesting. That would have definitely been interesting. Turns into a panther and stuff like that. I would have liked to have seen. Oh
Could have gone
God!
another season.
Anybody ever figure out why David Selby, when he turned into a werewolf, he lost at least 5 inches in height?
Yeah.
That was the other thing. In addition to being the best dressed werewolf in the whole place, he lost 5 inches, and you figured, oh my God, maybe all that hair growth had something to do with it. I don't know, but this was stuff that they just passed by. This they didn't really,
It was kind of
this.
ingenious of them, though, the way they did the werewolf thing, though, to have him ready for it. David Selby fall down, and the werewolf would pop up.
And of course, you'd have him go into the agony, and then the whole.
And you had Nancy Barrett. I wasn't expecting that romance between Nancy Barrett and Quentin.
Oh yeah,
I did not
I
expect
still
that.
have the 45. I want to dance with you.
I tried to make him sing that. He wouldn't sing that for me. But I got him to read a couple poems.
That's probably didn't remember the lines. I mean, he had that from when he went to the conventions. And they asked him to do Quentin's theme, and he was prepared for that. David Selby is a very accomplished man. He has a PhD. And he was
really into his Abraham Lincoln stuff.
Oh, he likes that. Yeah, that's his other alternative thing. But he was going for a PhD in Brooklyn College when he was hired as Quentin. He was, I think, teaching. He was a graduate assistant there. So that was kind of interesting. But anyway,
again, I want to thank you both for giving me your time and coming on.
Oh, thanks for asking us. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I very, very much appreciate it. Thank you both. I want to please let me know what you're doing. I'd love to have you both back on.
I'd love to come back
for some DS and other stuff.
Anytime.
I'm going to track down some literary license episodes, and link's going to be in the description box for those episodes. Thank you, Tom Hotz, and thank you, Vickie Ray. Have a lovely night.
Thank you.
Tom Hotz, a.k.a. Tom Diamond, says welcome.
Hotz. It's Hotzy. Hotzy.
Hot sounds like a name. Hot sounds like hot sounds like a joke. Hot sounds like a name, and that's what I had a cousin who changed his name to Hunter. I said, "What the hell do you have to do that for? You have to legally change your name. You got to pay money and all this, and it's got to go through a
$800.
Just pronounce your name differently, for God's sakes."
My name is Jule, Jule. I married a woman named Julie, Julie.
That's got to have some interesting conversations.
Jewel and Julie. I like that. I like
that. It had one hell of an interesting conversation when they put my wife's birth control in my name once upon a time. I won't say what my wife said because none of it was nice to the pharmacy.
That's funny. That's funny.
I was laughing about it. I thought it was hysterical, but
I think it's funny.
so, but she didn't think it was funny. Again, thank you both so much.
You're welcome.
You folks have a great night.
Bye.
Hey, thank you.